last part, we left the Gneisenau moored at Gottenhofen. She would soon be shifted to Kiel due to the need to return her to full battle readiness, where she would enter dry dock for the completion of her refit. After the 14th of January 1941, the remaining work would be done alongside the quay in Kiel. In a refit, the bow would be strengthened, along with the installation of quadruple 20mm anti-aircraft mountings on a retractable lattice platform located where the new aircraft hangar was planned later for the ship. The other 20mm single mounts were replaced with newer models, wherein by 4 a.m. on the 22nd, the two battleships, Gneisenau and Scharnhorst, would embark for the second time for Operation Berlin, with overall command under Admiral Gunther Lütjens. They would refuel through a series of tankers that had been set up in the Atlantic, in which they would be located in places that were off the beaten track, so to speak. By 8:30 that morning, they were waiting between the Danish islands of Fyn and Sjælland, where they would stop for a time waiting for their escorts and minesweepers. Due to ice, the escorts wouldn't reach the two battleships until the morning of the 25th, venturing through the Skagerrak, going up the Norwegian coast without incident. Seemingly, they had not been detected. On the 26th, dawn brought clear skies. Lütjens decided rather than attempt the Faroe Gap, he would take the two battleships into the Arctic Sea and refuel with the tanker Adria, and then try the Denmark Strait. But with the weather deteriorating, Lütjens would change his mind, and at midnight he ordered the ships to change course and head towards the southwest, and the Faroe Gaps, arriving just before midnight on the 27th. During this time, Gneisenau was in the lead, however her radar would break down, necessitating Scharnhorst to take the lead instead. At 6:20 in the morning on the 28th, a contact appeared on Scharnhorst's radar, which turned out to be the British Dido-class light cruiser Naiad, which had sighted the two German battleships. Fearing that this cruiser was part of a larger force, Lütjens would reverse course and quietly take the two battleships back towards the Arctic Sea. With this in mind, the new commander of the home fleet, Admiral John Tovey, who had the battlecruiser Repulse and 4 destroyers in the area, would soon have more steaming north to reinforce this patrol and to guard the Denmark Strait. Lütjens would head toward the north in the vicinity of the island Jan Mayen, where he would wait for the Adria, hoping that the sturdy cause would die down, waiting until the 2nd of February to turn south again and begin a wary approach towards the Denmark Strait, arriving at the strait in the evening of Friday the 3rd of February. By this time, Admiral Tovey had sent a vast majority of ships away from the area to refuel. With this bit of luck, the two German battleships would encounter a fog bank spreading from the Greenland side of the channel, and visibility dropped. At 3:30 a.m. on the 4th, the Gneisenau, whose radar was working again, detected a ship ahead of them, so Lütjens ordered a course alteration to avoid this ship, doing so successfully, and by dawn they were clear of the strait. This was quite the momentous moment for the Germans, as it was the first time in either the First or Second World War that a German battleship had reached the open waters of the Atlantic. On the 5th, the two ships would rendezvous with the tanker Schlettstad to the south of Cape Farewell. After refueling, the two German battleships would head southeast, following some intelligence reports which suggested a homeward-bound convoy HX-106 was in the area. By the 8th of February, the convoy had been spotted roughly 700 miles east of Halifax. Lütjens would decide to divide his forces to cover more sea, dispatching the Scharnhorst to attack from the south, while the Gneisenau would come in from the northwest. The convoy HX-106 was a large one, consisting of 41 merchant ships deployed in 9 columns and 5 rows, spanning 4 miles of the ocean. At 8:45, Gneisenau would approach from the northwest Lakeland and Scharnhorst from the south, both at 25 knots. The convoy was unaware of their approach and continued to go at 8 knots. At 9:12, funnel smoke of the convoy was spotted from the bridge of the Gneisenau, but at 9:47, spotters from the Scharnhorst would spot the mastheads of an enemy battleship escorting the convoy, reporting the sighting to Lütjens. This turned out to be the Royal Sovereign-class battleship HMS Ramillies, armed with 8 15-inch guns. After receiving this report at 9:58, Lütjens would order the two German battleships to break off the attack immediately. At 10 o'clock and 10:01 respectively, both Scharnhorst and Gneisenau would break off the attack, steaming away at 28 knots, planning to meet up at a prearranged rendezvous 25 miles to the northwest. Now, to quote here from Big Guns in the Atlantic, Germany's Battleships and Cruisers Raid the Convoys 1939 to 1941 by Agnes Konstam, quote, Lütjens has been criticized for his excessive caution, but he was merely following the strict orders of Reda. He was there to attack merchant ships, not engage in avoidable duels with enemy battleships, end quote. Captain Hoffen, who was commanding the Scharnhorst, attempted to draw the Ramillies away from the convoy and allow the Gneisenau to attack the convoy, but this was prevented when Lütjens ordered him away. The Ramillies, who had spotted the Scharnhorst, would misidentify her as the Admiral Hipper 10 days later when she arrived at Liverpool, so the British would remain unaware of the German battleships in the Atlantic. Lutyens would withdraw to a supply area off Greenland, where both battleships would refuel from the tankers Schlestatt and Esso Hamburg. While this occurred, the Gneisenau would have to deal with another problem. Her engines had been contaminated with seawater, in which she would have to effect repairs. Luckily, the Admiral Hipper was out in the Atlantic to the southwest. With this, Lutyens hoped this would draw the British capital ships away. Nevertheless, on the 16th, Scharnhorst and Gneisenau would head south, but this time farther to the west, as according to more intelligence reports, another convoy had left Halifax, and Lutyens hoped that he would get another chance, of which he would on the 22nd of February. After spotting a lone merchant ship on the 17th, to which he did not attack, hoping for that larger convoy. Anyway, early on the 22nd, Scharnhorst detected a contact on radar and saw smoke at dawn, soon spotting several unescorted merchant vessels, as Allied practice was to disperse westbound convoys 500 miles east of Newfoundland so that they could reach their destinations independently. With this, the two German battleships would pounce on their prey, first sinking the merchant steamer Kantara. Following this, the battleships would sink four more ships, the two freighters A. Duff and Trelawney, and the two tankers Harlesden and Lustrous. The displacement lost in this attack was 25,784 tons in total. After this attack, Lutyens would head southwards again, rendezvousing with the two support ships, the Emerald and Breme, on the 27th of February, transferring 187 prisoners and taking on fuel. With this, Lutyens would order his ships on a new course. He wanted to head east to attack the convoy routes between West Africa and Britain. By the 3rd of March, the two battleships were west of the Canary Islands and near the convoy routes. With more refueling done, the battleships would go out and hunt for more merchantmen. Due to the much calmer seas, the ships could use their spotter planes, covering a much larger search radius. However, contact with U-boat U-124 was made, but the submarine was hunting for two enemy battleships and hadn't properly recognized the two German battleships, so this hunt was called off, and the battleships would continue on their way. By the 7th, the ships would be heading off to intercept the northbound convoy SL-67, to which Lutyens planned to attack it. By the morning of the 8th, the battleships were almost alongside the convoy's path, 350 miles north of the Cape Verde Islands. Maneuvering southwest, the two battleships would be 10 miles apart to search an area as wide as possible, with good visibility that morning. But the Germans would be spotted first that morning, with the Scharnhorst at 10:30 spotting a British swordfish plane, the kind carried by some British cruisers and capital ships, which wasn't exactly a good omen for the German battleships, as the convoy SL-67 had as escorts HMS Malaya and two destroyers, with Malaya being armed with 8 15-inch guns. The swordfish would report the sighting of the German battleships, and by 10:50, lookouts on the Gneisenau would spot the foremast of Malaya, and Lutyens knew what he was fighting, swiftly ordering both battleships to turn away and break contact from Malaya, and the destroyer Forester, who had also been spotted by the Germans. The British would stay with their convoy. For the second time in 4 weeks, Lutyens had turned away from a fight, but on the 9th, Scharnhorst would come across the British freighter Marathon and sank the 7,296-ton ship after taking her crew as prisoners. After this incident, Lutyens would order the battleships northeast, met up with the tankers Uckermark and Emerald, making contact on the 11th and completed refueling on the 12th. The two tankers would come with the German ships, this time to double the area covered by his force's lookouts. The German group would head north-northwest until reaching the latitude of New York, beginning a sweep northwards, hoping to come across more dispersed ships, where on the 15th, Lutyens would find more merchantmen to sink. That morning, the four German ships were spread 20,000 meters apart, which allowed the group to cover almost 50 nautical miles of ocean. The Uckermark would spot what looked like two tankers ahead, signaling the Gneisenau, who promptly surged forward to investigate, in so doing, first finding and sinking the British tanker Simnia, with 57 of the remaining crew being taken as prisoners. The other tanker, the San Cismero, would be captured intact and sent off to Germany with a prize crew, but managed to send out a distress signal. Nevertheless, this would not be the end of the day's actions, when 4 hours after, and 80 nautical miles farther north, they came across a cluster of ships, with one tanker and 3 cargo ships. One of the ships, the Rio Dorado, would try to run, but was sunk by the Gneisenau with all hands. The other 3 ships, the tanker Strength, and the cargo ships, the British Crown Royal and the French Maison, were all sunk after their crews were taken prisoner. Not only that, but over to the west, 3 more tankers were spotted and set upon, with the Athelflamme being sunk and the 2 Norwegian ships, the Bianca and Polycarp, with the Bianca being captured and sent back to Germany. This day, the Germans captured 3 ships and sank 6 more, in total just over 45,000 tons of Allied shipping. These other ships had just dispersed from a westbound convoy, meaning that other ships could be close by. The following day would see first the sinking of the cargo ship Empire of Industry by Scharnhorst, and then the Norwegian freighter Granali, which was sunk by the Gneisenau. Followed by this, the Dutch cargo ship Mankai and the British Sardinian Prince. The Dutch ship tried to escape and was sunk before a crew could abandon ship, with 9 out of a crew of 45 surviving to be captured. This would quickly be followed by the sinking of the Silver Fur. By 11 a.m., the Scharnhorst would overpower another cargo ship, the Dematon, whose crew was captured. The Gneisenau would also get in on the action, coming across the cargo ship Chilean Reefer, who put up a brief fight, but quickly surrendered. Lutyens would add another 7 ships to a string of successful days, sinking around 28,375 more tons of Allied shipping. But this continued success would not last long, as the smoking wreck of the Chilean Reefer could be spotted for miles, not to mention the fact that a report came in of the distress signal by one of the ships, and the smoke would be a beacon to their position. Gneisenau's radar would pick up multiple radar contacts to the northwest at a range of 20,000 meters, which turned out to be the convoy HX-114 of 40 merchant ships, hoping to find a lightly protected convoy to attack, which would round off this cruise quite nicely. But it turned out the convoy was guarded by HMS Rodney, this being reported at 8:35 p.m. Armed with 9 16-inch guns, it was too much for Lutyens to risk a fight with this battleship. The rescue of British merchant seamen was abandoned, and the ship steamed to the southeast towards the Scharnhorst, who was 8 miles away with the tankers. Before being able to leave the scene, she was spotted by the Rodney, who flashed an interrogatory signal at her at 8:37, to which Lutyens signaled back that he was the British light cruiser Emerald. With that, the Gneisenau left the scene and disappeared. Rodney turned to investigate, but it was not until later, when they picked up the survivors of the Chilean Reefer, did they learn the identity of the mysterious ship. With that powerful British ship there, it was a warning for the German battleships to return to Europe. Suspecting the path through the Denmark Strait was blocked, the ships would head east, stopping one more time to refuel on the 18th. Within 2 days, the ships were 800 nautical miles from home, a day and a half sailing. But that morning, a swordfish from the carrier HMS Ark Royal sighted the captured tanker Bianca, who was far behind the battleships, with the plan of taking it to Bordeaux. Ark Royal, who was part of Force H, was providing air cover for the convoys on the West African route to Britain. With that, the battlecruiser Renown and Vice Admiral James Somerville went to investigate, to which the German crews aboard Bianca and the San Sismiro would scuttle their ships before they could be recaptured. But at 5:30 p.m. on the 20th, a ferry Fulmar from Ark Royal would sight the Gneisenau and Scharnhorst, being 140 nautical miles north of Renown, of which there was no chance of catching the German ships before nightfall and prevented the carrier from launching a strike. During the night, the German battleships would head north at high speed, heading for Brest, to which at 6:15, when Somerville learned the news, he sent Ark Royal speeding north. On the 21st, it wasn't until 8:14 p.m. they found the German battleships, heading east at 21 knots, being escorted by a pair of German torpedo boats. With this, Lutyens was within 120 nautical miles of Brest, and Somerville could not do anything about it now, due to German air cover, and instead turned towards Gibraltar. The pair of German battleships reached Brest at 8:45 a.m. on Saturday, the 22nd of March. Now, with that, I'll leave the Gneisenau in Brest after a long journey around the Atlantic. In so doing, we will cover the rest of her career and eventual demise in the next parts. I hope you all have a great day, and good luck this week.